When icky white men feel entitled to human decency. Hashtag Kavanaugh hearings.
That's what you're telling me right now. Look at me when I'm talking to you. You're telling me that my assault doesn't matter. That what happened to me doesn't matter. And that you're going to let people who do these things into power. That's what you're telling me when you vote for him. Don't look away from me. Look at me and tell me that it doesn't matter what happened to me. That you'll let people like that go to the highest court of the land and tell everyone what they can do to their bodies.
Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and while that guy in the elevator is a politician and thus has to deal with PR and managing to remain favorable in the eyes of the masses, I personally don't. So I'd like to remind that woman that no, whatever might have allegedly happened to you literally doesn't matter. I don't care what happened to her, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the Supreme Court. It's also quite telling that the Twitter video cut off when it did, as it just started to become apparent that this particular hysterical woman was about to launch into some diatribe about reproductive rights being somehow linked to her sexual assault or something. Because, let's face it, this isn't really about sexual assault at all. It's about left-wing politics in general, probably Planned Parenthood, and what some right-wingers call the abortion industrial complex, which is why they really want to keep Kavanaugh off the bench. Really, though, when examining the Kavanaugh hearings, I found myself struggling to find a name for the dramatic double standards of complete and utter horrific behavior that is being either excused, ignored, or encouraged coming from Kavanaugh's opposition. All the while, the man and his supporters are being raked through the coals while having their eyes gouged out, then victim blamed for defending themselves, and even mocked for showing emotion like that would fly if it were a woman. It is, without a doubt, the single most profoundly obvious, dramatic, and nationally relevant instance of cry-bullying that we have faced in politics since the never-ending saga that was the 2016 election cycle, which feels to me is just now finally ending. Maybe if only because the Supreme Court is for life, Donald Trump isn't impeached, and he's actually about to get one of his guys appointed. So there's finally a new battle worth at least temporarily letting go of the last one for. So how do we quantify what is truly going on here and accurately give name to what we witness transpiring, while remembering to point out that the bad actors responsible for the shenanigans are almost unanimously stating that the exact opposite of what is happening, and that somehow they are all the victims of white male entitlement? Or something? Truthfully, I'm at a bit of a loss for words, and that's really saying something. It is really, really twisted, sad, and disgusting. Just when you thought the left couldn't go any lower in cowardly attacks towards white men, and that their misogyny and tokenization of weaponized female fragility couldn't get any more pathetic, and that maybe we could go a month or two without dozens of protesters getting arrested, some of whom might totally be being paid, we have this display.
More than 300 opinions. His opinions span nearly 5,000 pages in length. But what's remarkable about Judge Kavanaugh's judicial record is not just its length, but its depth and its quality. Judge Kavanaugh has been a true thought leader. He's written passing up the opportunity to confirm a great jurist, but would also undermine civility in politics twice over.
Now, I'm sure some of you are asking what my opinions of Brett Kavanaugh as a judge are. And truthfully, I've never been privy to much of any information about him as a judge, which I realize I could easily rectify if I chose. But of course, why should I even bother? The people who are most likely about to vote him onto the Supreme Court seem to think that he has an impeccable record, and the people opposed to him really don't give a crap about anything besides the 3 P's: privilege, patriarchy, and problematic. But of course, with all the carrying on about how he's an icky, mean, white male, none of that by itself has the potential to legitimately stop the guy from taking a seat at the highest level of our judicial branch of government, the Supreme Court. However, the Democrats and their army of weaponized far-leftist radicals do, in fact, still have a plan of attack designed to thwart his attempts at achieving what he has worked his entire life to obtain, which they've been brewing for numerous years, starting with the despicable fabrication that women never lie, encouraging us to listen and believe, which became malignant mostly in the entertainment industry's formal hashtag #MeTooLieFest, that has now become fully weaponized in its potential final form, a woman named Christine Blasey Ford, who has taken it directly to high-stakes national politics. Now, anybody with a sense of how politics actually works easily detected the obviously non-organically viral corporate media-sponsored Me Too movement as a political power play designed to attack inconvenient males in positions of power, by way of concocting non-falsifiable allegations, usually from several years ago, in order to ruin the guy's reputations and get them fired or removed from office or whatever. That part shouldn't be any sort of news, and I called it from the beginning with this video. But what I find most interesting is just how far this has gone, how obviously Ford is lying, and just how calculated it looks if you used 3 brain cells and thought of the Me Too movement as a strategic endeavor that would eventually be weaponized against men like Kavanaugh. So why do I think that she's lying? That she's lying. Well, I could go by the evidence, which everybody else is doing, and that basically proves that she's lying, but I will start by reminding you guys about my history. My mother was a bit obsessive about making sure her children were super talented, so she had me acting in plays and in theater classes since before I was 10, and I have done theater my entire life ever since, including as my major in college, so I'm pretty good at detecting when somebody is acting. More potently, though, I was addicted to opiates off and on for 5 years of my life, and I promise you, nothing gives you a BS detector like hanging out with junkies and being one for a long while. Honestly, not a lot gets past me when I am completely sober, which I almost exclusively am these days, minus a few days a month where I might drink a bit. Thus, when I saw even the first 30 seconds of Ford's initial testimony, every instinct within me screamed that she had to be lying. I mean, does she truly look nervous here?
Please.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. I think after I read my opening statement, I anticipate needing some caffeine, if that is available.
Okay. Can you pull the microphone just a little bit closer to you, please?
Okay.
Can the whole box go a little bit closer?
I'm trying, Senator. No.
Okay. Well, then.
I'll lean forward.
Thank you.
I could.
Thank you.
Okay. Is this good?
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, that would have been probably all that I would need to see to be confident that this woman was making the whole thing up for some ulterior motive. An ulterior motive which is not the least bit difficult to imagine for such a high-stakes position as the Supreme Court. Did you see how giddy she was when she described her alleged discomfort? More so, did you see how pleased and eager the people to either side of her were to help her get comfortable? Obviously, I can't prove this, but it appears that this was not a tense situation for any of them. I'd guess that this was an opportunity for each of them to capitalize in some way. But of course, you don't have to take my word for it that it's probably a sham. It's actually a well-known phenomenon that this type of thing happens, and there's even a term for it, according to the experts.
We commit terrible crimes and we smile at the delight in getting away with it. Now that smile is known in the trade as duping delight.
From my experience as somebody that was a serial liar for a while myself when I was a drug addict, the underlying emotion behind duping delight is not simply being pleased with oneself because you are conning somebody for personal gains, which definitely is part of it. But more so, there's a strange confidence that you exhibit when you overcompensate to make a story sound believable, as you truly convince yourself that your lies are more believable if you sound happy to tell them. Oddly, I've found that this very often does actually work on people, as people generally see eagerness to tell a story as a sign of honesty, because people assume that somebody with something to hide would cower away from approaching such a conversation at all. As if people, in general, don't have a lifetime worth of experience practicing lying, and as if women, in particular, haven't learned since they were very little girls how to speak with their voices shaking or with fake tears in order to sound sympathetic.
I don't have all the answers, and I don't remember as much as I would like to. But the details about that night that bring me here today are the ones I will never forget. They have been seared into my memory and have haunted me episodically as an adult.
I'll drop the link at the bottom of this video, the place where you can watch her full opening testimony, and you'll find that after the opening passage where her voice starts shaking in such a melodramatic way, it essentially never wavers for the next 15 minutes or so. There's never a moment where she cools down and reads like a normal person, nor a moment where she is tipped over the edge by a particularly emotional passage in her recollection. Rather, she recites the long speech in the exact same mildly upset and shaky-voiced monotone type of way for the entire opening statement. It sounds completely phony by itself, but of course, it doesn't mean that she's not telling the truth. So how about we listen to what Kavanaugh has to say about it?
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Feinstein, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to make my statement. I wrote it myself yesterday afternoon and evening. No one has seen a draft or it except for one of my former law clerks. This is my statement.
Interesting. It almost seems like he's wanting to tell his side of the story without coaching so that he knows he is sticking strictly to what he really remembers and not what other people told him to say. Why on earth would somebody want to do that? Wait, it's almost as if he's familiar with the way investigators, interrogators, and legal cross-examination works. Maybe as if he's a judge.
Ask a deceptive person to tell their story, they're going to pepper it with way too much detail in all kinds of irrelevant places. And then they're going to tell their story in strict chronological order. And what a trained interrogator does is they come in, and in very subtle ways, over the course of several hours, they will ask that person to tell their story backwards. And then they'll watch them squirm and track which questions produce the highest volume of deceptive tells.
Of course, you're still thinking to yourself that Christine Blasey Ford might be telling the truth about the fact that 36 years ago she was sexually assaulted at a party with numerous underage prep school boys, and she never said anything about it until a private couples counseling session in 2012, and then when the guy was being voted onto the Supreme Court, she decided to come public with it. Maybe she's telling the truth. Maybe. But I'd guess it's unlikely considering...
Less than 2 weeks ago, Dr. Ford publicly accused me of committing wrongdoing at an event more than 36 years ago when we were both in high school. I denied the allegation immediately categorically and unequivocally. All 4 people allegedly at the event, including Dr. Ford's longtime friend, Ms. Kaiser, have said they recall no such event. Her longtime friend, Ms. Kaiser, said under penalty of felony that she does not know me and does not believe she ever saw me at a party ever.
More so, let's hear about how he talks about what happened to him since the allegations have surfaced. I mean, surely nothing he could ever suffer could ever match the horror of sexual violence committed towards a woman, right? Surely he's exhibiting a lot of duping delight here, right?
Unfortunately, it took the committee 10 days to get to this hearing. In those 10 long days, as was predictable and as I predicted, my family and my name have been totally and permanently destroyed by vicious and false additional accusations. The 10-day delay has been harmful to me and my family, to the Supreme Court, and to the country.
Still, of course, he can't be a victim. He's a man, and a white one at that. He is not entitled to the entitlements of the white male patriarchy. He's not entitled to feeling entitled about entitlements of ruling on the Supreme Court. He rode on the backs of hundreds of years of slavery and white supremacist patriarchy, so he is not entitled to being entitled to entitlements that would demand that he is entitled to defend himself. At least not according to leftists on social media. While the identity of this particular commentator is blurred out, it should be of note that this is a white gay man that believes the whammon. So he's very stunning and brave, obviously. I like how somebody had to comment that they are copying these words as if they're profound. This next guy just decided to go ahead and copy and paste the most popular meme of a headline that has been floating around on the blogs and stuff, in which people state literally what has truly become the exact opposite of the truth, where white males get dragged through the mud, then the coals, then through the mud yet again, and then told that they can't defend themselves, and then told it's privilege. Finally, I thought that this comment was particularly interesting, as it brought up a moment during the hearing that I hadn't even seen. Something about the fact that he responded to a question with another question, which I had to go look up.
So you're saying there's never been a case where you drank so much that you didn't remember what happened the night before or part of what happened?
You're asking about, blackout. I don't know, have you?
Could you answer the question, Judge? That's not happened. Is that your answer?
Yeah, and I'm curious if you have.
I have no drinking problem.
Gee, it's almost as if the man has drunken alcohol. Literally ever. And he thought it was a fair point to bring up that people don't always remember everything that happens when they are drunk, by way of reminding the moral Puritan that she's probably done the same exact thing, which I'm sure she probably has. But of course, she's a woman, and she isn't under the Supreme Court nomination inquisition, and therefore, even if she beats up toddlers with a frying pan after a shot and a half of whiskey, and Brett Kavanaugh merely passed out while listening to classic rock after a long day and 4 beers, she's asking the questions. So how dare he defend himself? It's at this moment when we simply have to think about women in politics in general, and the inevitability of these types of situations arising once people weaponize sexual misconduct, alleged sexual misconduct, power dynamics that currently dramatically favor women, where they get to claim that they are overpowered by the white male entitled patriarchy, and then where it all ends. There's YouTubers that many would describe as far-right extremists, like Black Pigeon Speaks, who have made fairly well-argued videos that claim that women more than probably will lead to the fall of Western civilization. And I personally want to say, no, that's wacky. But if what he is saying is wacky, I would also be quite intimidated by the prospect of debating him about it. Truthfully, I don't have all the answers, and I have known a number of great women that don't pull this type of crap. But when all is said and done, Kavanaugh will probably sit on the Supreme Court. Many women will then go on to double down on this type of hysteria, as they will have an even easier time claiming that we live in a quote-unquote patriarchy, while they modestly go back to living in a lavish world of female privileges and social entitlements. And most men will probably just, sit back, drink a beer, and be forced to giggle at memes like this one.